Welcome to the EchoCast. I am Morgan, also known as Bond Diesel. Though I think I'm going to start getting away from that. I'm a real person, not a screen name. We'll see. I don't know. Probably not. Bond Diesel sounds a lot cooler. That's just my opinion. So, I'm getting ready to leave, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So this episode may not be too long. I still have lots of preparing around our house and packing and so on to do for reasons which I will get into shortly. First, content updates. Giveaway coming soon. I've decided to do a bunch of merch items, Division and Bond. There's a ton of people giving away the game right now, and honestly I can't really afford to do it. So if I get on in any free copies, or if any come available, I'll be more than happy to do it. But until then, I'm going to just give away some cool stuff. So be on the lookout for that. Today is Saturday, the 26th, I believe. And I did not stream today. I definitely intended to before I left for the thing I'm talking about in a minute. Unfortunately, it appears my splitter has pooped itself. I just ordered a new one, so by the time I get home by Wednesday, when is my next planned stream, I should be up again, and be on the lookout for me there. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I do stream on Twitch 4 to 5 times a week for a few hours to talk about things, play games. In the short term, I actually plan on playing all the way through Resident Evil 2. Gonna be straight up kind of bored with playing Division. Once I got my last piece of classified, my motivations have dropped. I've got to be between 4,500 to 5,000 hours now. I love the game. It's a great game. I still enjoy playing it, but considering how much I know I'm about to invest into Division 2, I think it's okay to play some other games for a bit. So there's that. State of the game recap. Okay, so we didn't actually have a state of the game, but we had a special report and a promise that state of the games are returning soonish. My words only. In the special report, they covered Dark Zone and PvP information. We had Julian Garrity, Matthias Carlson, I believe, Terry Spear, and Keith Evans. So we had some Massive, we had some Red Storm, and it was a lot of a recap, but we did get some new information. For all the recap information, you can figure that out. I've got some videos and summaries that you can check out if you want, but I'm just going to try to stick to the stuff that I think was new. So, loot that you extract that's toxic and you have to extract from the DZ will not have set rolls until you extract it. And then it's going to have an algorithm to skew towards what you need or prefer, or something like that. Sorry, I hiccuped and it was really awkward. And then I talked about it, and now we're still on it, and now we're moving away. So I don't really get that. I think they were being kind of vague, because maybe it's not, I suspect it's done, whatever the system is, but maybe it's not finalized. I'm curious to learn more about this, because I hope that just because I have an assault rifle with a certain talent doesn't mean I won't get that again, because maybe I like it. That's why I have it. At the same time, I hope that because I have an assault rifle with a certain talent, it doesn't mean that every gun I get doesn't have that talent, because maybe I don't always want it. So I'm curious to how this is going to work. They were pretty vague. I'm sure we'll learn more moving forward. There was a kind of a hot take quick answer session with the network team, which I thought was really cool, and I hope we get more of that in the future. They said that we had no language region lock. I am not aware of that being an issue, but I suspect it was at least a concern by people somewhere. Easy anti-cheat was confirmed here. They talked about it specifically. They talked a lot about banning cheaters being especially a priority now, especially with a new system that makes it easier to find them. though they did reinforce that they do ban waves every week still, and still take reports and have the back end reporting that they look at. This was really cool to me and a little scary, but they said that they the tick rate of the servers will be revealed or be public information at launch. That's a big deal, because the tick rate is how often the servers update. And in the Division 1, this was a relatively low number because it's a PvE game. The problem is that it's also a PvP game, and the tick rate that I believe the first game ran at was extremely slow for a PvP game, to the point where it was kind of unacceptable. And I believe it was a tick rate of 10, which if you remember all the controversy about Black Ops 4 when it came out, people were mad because the tick rates have been turned down and the performance was worse. A higher tick rate typically means better hit registration, less bouncing around of player models that you're shooting at. It's just, basically, the higher the tick rate, the better. The problem is that the higher the tick rate, the more capable a machine needs to be to process the information more often, both on the server side and the user side. So when you start looking at the older consoles, especially the Xbox One and the PS4, but even the new consoles, aren't ideal for this. And they can only raise them so high. That's why sometimes you have situations where the console version of a game will have a lower tick rate than the PC. Battlefield is a big one here. Battlefield's experimented with extremely high tick rate servers before, and it's extremely fluid but very demanding. But you can definitely tell the difference. So the tick rate being public will be cool. I'm just not expecting extremely surprising numbers. One thing they mentioned about that, by the way, was I don't know how many people realize that obviously the servers handle everything the player is doing, and a lot of the hit registration, stuff like that. One thing I think people forget is that the servers and our constant connection is actually what controls the AI. As far as I'm aware, as far as I know, there is zero artificial intelligence work being done on your console or on your PC. It's all being streamed. That I think is kind of essential because of the way the game is set up, and especially the co-op side of it. But I think people often forget that this isn't like a lot of other games where the servers are doing a relatively small job. They're doing almost everything, and we shall see how that works out. They reinforce that there's dedicated servers. I've seen multiple people point out that this is new, and it's not. Division 1 had dedicated servers. You can't really do a game like Division with like peer-to-peer servers. It would never. No one's machine is powerful enough to make that work for the reasons I had spoken about just before. And then they were really confident that things like the chicken dance and the running in place bug are gone. And their reasoning behind being so confident about that is due to network and game changes. So as far as I can tell, that looks true from what I can see. We'll have to see the proof in the pudding or whatever. I think that was all of the main points. I don't believe there was a lot more left. If you want to go back and watch that stream, I actually really suggest watching Hamish and Petter play after the stream. They played for almost an hour. Just kind of regular, just what you might really be doing when you pick up the game and play in the DZ. They were clearing landmarks, they were fighting other players. To me, it looked really smooth and fun, and like there was always something to do, which is something I think is going to be really important for the game in general, but especially the DZ, as it seems like they're still giving the people who want to be in there to kill people that ability, but also encouraging people who maybe that's not their goal to still be in there. So we'll have to see how that works out. We don't have a date for the next day of the game yet. Be on the lookout. I bet they do one around launch, maybe a few weeks before. We will have to see. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they do stay of the games after the beta, the first beta that's coming up here, or the only beta. We don't know. I'll dig into that another time. The Division news. Well, we had the special report. I've talked about that at length. The other bit of news, I was able, as well as some other people, were able to talk about it yesterday or on Friday, that there is a hands-on event happening in San Francisco, California, in the United States. I'm under the impression there may be other events going on around the world as well. I don't really know anything about that. I've only heard whispers. I'll let those people talk about that if it's a thing. But yeah, so I'm super pumped. I get to go out to San Francisco. I can't talk about what I'm gonna do. I can say it's for the Division. I can hint, wink wink, that there's more information coming very soon. I can't talk about what it is, and to be straight up, in this exact moment that I'm recording this, I actually don't know what I'm going to do. So even if I did, I couldn't tell you, but I just probably wouldn't mention it. But once I do know, I still can't tell you. So I assume there will be an embargo for whatever I see. I do plan on getting a video and trying to prepare lots and lots of cool videos for you guys. I am trying to improve my videos. The last one I posted about the new enemy factions is over 3,000 views now, which is almost double, I think, what I've ever gotten on a video. And we're pushing close to 1,000 subs on YouTube. So if you don't sub me on there, look for Bond Diesel on YouTube. I make some aggressively mediocre content, and I really appreciate people's feedback and trying to get better. What I really want to say with this event is I'm super excited, and I don't give myself any credit for it. I give all of the credit to everyone else. I appreciate anyone who listens to this podcast, who watches me on stream. Heaven forbid you follow me on Twitter and deal with that whole mess. I really do appreciate this. I try to work hard. I enjoy doing this. I got into it to try to bring a reasonable voice to this community for a game I really like. I've gotten to know a lot of people in the community. I've gotten to know devs and CMs and all these great people. And I think all of you, even the people who don't like me, thank you too. You kind of motivate me a bit. And sometimes that is a good thing. That said, I do have to admit that any content that comes from this, you all should be thanking my wife, also known as Bay Diesel, for it, because I was extremely hesitant to go. We've got some stuff going on. It's not a bad thing. Everything's good. In fact, it's, it's great. But I was extremely hesitant to go for many reasons, including work and vacation time and all kinds of stuff. But Bay Diesel basically wouldn't take no for an answer, and is really excited for me, knows how big of an opportunity this is. She doesn't want me to leave because she'll miss me, but she's probably the most supportive person anyone could ever ask for. And I really hope anyone who enjoys the stuff I do really appreciates this lady as well, because if she wasn't so cool with me spending all this hilarious amount of time doing these things basically as a hobby, it wouldn't happen. I wouldn't be taking this trip. She's awesome. You should think she's awesome too, and we're gonna go on from there. So thank you, Bay Diesel, you're the best. The next part here, speculation discussion. We actually have some listener questions this time. I kind of want to get this thing going. So the one community topic I wanted to cover this week was I've seen some talk about the focus on PvP and how that worries some people. Okay, so it's gonna be okay, I promise. I have a slight suspicion that we may be getting the other side of the information soon. What I will say is that if the PvE side of the game is as in-depth and as varied as what we've seen so far from PvP and PvE, or PvP and Dark Zone, I mean, I'm really excited. I still think Division's a primarily PvE game. Despite all of this awesome news, they've actually blown my mind with how much PvP we're getting. I highly suspect that that may be the tip of the iceberg. We don't know yet. Hopefully we find out soon. But I've seen some disgruntled people a little annoyed about how much PvP we're getting with no PvE information, or nothing significant basically since like E3. But I think people need to just relax. with the PvP side of the game, we've seen them answer and hear so many of the questions and the comments and the desires from the community. You know, obviously there's some things that are rubbing some people the wrong way. They'll get over it. This game, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, is really kind of looking like a love letter to the Division community. An answer to all of the questions and the comments. At least with the PvP side of things, it looks like they're doing what they can to try to please everyone. They're not going to, that's an impossible task. But I really believe that instead of trying to make some people 100% happy, but maybe a majority not as much, it kind of seems like they're making everyone like 75% happy. And at the end of the day, being around this community long enough, being around the gaming community in general long enough, if you can make everyone even just 75% happy, that's pretty darn good, especially for a game that just reaches to so many people. So yes, we've had lots of PvP info. I suspect that's going to change before the game comes out. Probably, you know, we'll have to see. So just hold tight. Listener questions. Jernsum NL, gonna guess that's Netherlands, ask, given the news that has come out over the past week or so, what are your thoughts on a possible survival mode for The Division 2? So we've seen them say multiple times how much they like survival in Division 1. Skill Up did an interview with Julian Garrity and Matthias, I believe, and I think it's deleted. I assume there was info in there that maybe wasn't supposed to come out. I don't know. Maybe it's out there and I just missed it when I looked for it. But they basically just expressed their like of survival in an interview from a little more recent. I believe it was the December PvP event. I believe it was Julian again. Maybe it was, I can't remember. But they talked again about how much they really like survival. So I'm going to pretty much guarantee there's going to be some kind of evolution of survival. Now we have a vastly different environment. We have a vastly different setting. We have vastly different weather. We have a vastly different story, I'm going to guess. So what I hope people anticipate is something survival-ish, but probably with a lot of new mechanics. And I'm gonna be straight up, probably with some battle royale mixed in. It already had a little tiny bit. I personally think vanilla survival was better or had more potential than BR. But that said, I think people just have to understand how gaming trends work. And I bet we get survival. I bet it's in the same spirit as the Division 1, but I also bet it's quite a bit different. And I really hope people are willing to at least give it a chance. It's gonna be okay. We like the first one. They did some cool stuff with that. I really wish they would have done more, and hopefully whatever we get in Division 2, if we get it, will satisfy that urge that we all had. Next is Mr. Locke, and they ask, are we going to be are we going to have to be satisfied with whatever drops and let normalization sort it out, or grind the occupied DZ for the chance to get marginally better so that we get whatever small buff above what normalization allows? That's wordy, and that's my fault that I can't read. I don't know. Honestly, I think we've gotten enough information to know that normalization is essentially going to level the playing field for the most part. I mean, well put together builds, talent wise and skill wise and gun talent wise and you know, holstered talent wise, and you know, you're still going to be able to get an advantage. When it comes to occupied DZ, I doubt that we're going to need to go there as the only place to improve our gear, but I'm sure it will be one of the places. One thing I'm anticipating is when we get more PvE information, we're going to come to find that for people who want to go into PvP, into the dark zone and so on, to improve their build, to fight other people, to participate in those activities, it's going to be fruitful. What I also think is that if someone wants to do that same thing in PvE activities, I have a feeling we're going to have this variety of things to do, in the PvE side of the game that will also allow you to do that. And I think that's how it should be. I don't think that gear should be locked behind one place or the other. I think everyone should be able to get it, but you know, for the best gear, like in Division 1, the classified gear or exotics, I do think that should be locked behind challenging content, but not just PvP or just PvE. You should be able to do either, and you know, hopefully be able to have a equal amount of effort to reward in a ratio. But we shall see. So I honestly don't know, Locke. We will have to wait and see what they say with PvE, and more than likely just wait to see what it looks like when the game comes out. The next question comes from Wilco. I am interested on hearing your thoughts on if you think there will be a mechanic to making a DZ occupied, or if it will be on a timer. So I believe they've said it's on some type of timer. I don't believe they've given us like every 24 hours it switches or whatever. I really hope it's not too short, if that makes sense. I would like to know that if I log on today, that DZ West is occupied today, and then tomorrow it'll be DZ East. It could be even as long as weekly, but I really hope it's not like a contaminated event or something where, you know, it could just happen and it's only there for like 2 hours and then it switches over, because I suspect there's going to be people who are going to want to sit down and do like 4, 5, 6+ hour sessions of just occupied DZ, killing the most elite enemies, killing other players without any of the rogue mechanics and stuff like that. But we'll just have to wait and see. The beta may give us those answers, but I'm actually not sure yet. Thank you for the question. Flim Flam, 2 questions. First, with Glocks confirmed in the game, they have to give us a full auto machine pistol, right? Well, they don't have to do anything, but I would say them being willing to do like a 93R, like what we had in Division 1 with the 3-round burst, I have a feeling that we may end up getting that full auto Glock. All the power to the person that has to figure out how to balance that to, 1, be effective, but 2, not be OP. Because if I remember correctly, those Glock machine pistols have a hilariously high fire rate. So we'll have to see how they figure that one out. The second question from Flim Flam is, Terry or Tony mentioned the dynamic world, parentheses, smarter AI, and randomized rotating loot containers when they talked about the checkpoint campers. What are your hopes for how dynamic this world would be for both PvE and PvP? So something I've talked about before is I think 1.8 was a big test bed for features for Division 2. One feature that I think may factor in here in the open world would be the random spawning in the Westside Piers. Now, I've been pretty vocal about how much I actually hate the Westside Piers random spawning, but one thing I recognize is that more than likely that was a very simplistic version, and I highly suspect that in Division 1 we had, I mean, you can basically memorize where all of the enemies are in Division 1 in the LZ and in the DZ in a lot of ways. The LZ bosses especially, but even the random mobs that run around. I mean, you can find the same ones. They walk a patrol basically, but you can find them. I highly doubt that's going to be the case in Division 2. In fact, I suspect it's going to be much bigger than that. There's details to that I know, but I'm not positive that they're public or not. I think they are, but I'm not going to go into it. But basically, I think in the PvE side of things, it's going to be significantly more dynamic. One thing I've talked about a long time ago that I really want is I actually hope that in the missions that we do, that there's a certain amount of dynamic spawning and stuff like that. In Division 1, we've all run Lexington a billion times, and we all know where every single enemy comes from, and when you kill this last enemy, they come from here, and all of that. It's tough. You don't want to get rid of that completely, because that's kind of part of this game. It's part of the grind, right? But it would be nice if there were some even fairly small alterations to the spawning and stuff like that, where we are at least a little bit on guard. When it comes to PvP, you know, with fewer people in the DZs, but smaller DZs, where it makes it actually more dense with players, I suspect that's going to make it a lot more dynamic. In that sense, the thing with PvP, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for random, kind of, you know, kicking around the can, being silly, the DZ is great for that, and I think it still will be. The thing is if you're really trying to, you know, try hard and really try to show other people that you're better than them at PvP in a video game, you actually don't really want dynamic worlds, right? One big example of that is now how we know in the conflict mode of domination and skirmish, we now have custom built maps just for PvP, for 4v4 PvP. It doesn't appear these modes are going to have any PvE element, and I highly suspect that what they're going for here is a much more catered PvP experience that resembles something more along the lines of something like Ghost Recon Wildlands, or even you know, Rainbow Six or Call of Duty. So we'll have to see about that, but the dynamic world with PvP is weird, and it kind of depends on what you're wanting out of it, but we will see. So there's the questions for this week. I really appreciate those. Feel free to keep them coming. I love answering these, and they're a little more interesting than the random things I decide to talk about every week. That said, please comment on the YouTube version of this if that's where you listen to it, or if you're on iTunes, I would very much appreciate a rating, and even a little, if you want to type up a little comment and let me know what you think of the show, what you like, what you dislike. I highly appreciate it. If you want to ask questions for me to feature, just like I did at the end of this podcast, be sure to ask them via Twitter or Discord. There's links to both of those in the description. The EchoCast is on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. If you want to support any extra, you can support on Anchor as a supporter. There should be a link in the Anchor link. That is sort of like Patreon, or while I'm streaming on Twitch, you can do subs, bits, tips, whatever you want. I will tell you, from at least my perspective, tips are actually preferred simply because the streamer gets a much larger cut and Twitch gets basically none of it. But it is up to you, and it's also up to you to do absolutely nothing but lurk or watch and talk. Honestly, that's what most streamers would prefer anyways. You can find me on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch as BondDiesel. You can find me on Instagram as BondDiesel_Twitch. That's what I have for you this week, and until next time.
One, two, three, jump!